Okay, the main event. So, wow, guys. So, Civic Tech, we've been meeting for 10 years, and we're in for a treat tonight for 503rd Hacknight. Service design lessons from Toronto's largest food bank. This is one very important thing we have here in Toronto, and it's something, it's something we really do well, and we're getting better at it. So, there's really needed in Toronto. People need help. Just sort of side story, I'm so interested to hear about this. I actually volunteer at the food bank in my neighborhood. In the last few years, we've gone from helping 1,000 people to now over 3,000 people in the downtown Toronto area. I talked to a lot of folks in my neighborhood who didn't even know this exists, because if you don't take the right on that corner, you have no idea that there's 3,000 people in your neighborhood that are going to the food bank every Thursday afternoon. So, with that, with a very important topic that we're going to learn from, we are very privileged to hear some exciting insights from Brian and Alison. For those of you who are not familiar with Toronto's largest food bank, the Daily Bread Food Bank is a volunteer program. It's all volunteer, and it serves 8,000 volunteers annually. 8,000 annually, yeah. And it's, of course, like any large organization, faced with challenges with misalignment expectations, inefficient onboarding, and such that we'll learn about. This talk presents it's a case study showing how service transformed their volunteer experience, service design transfer their volunteer experience, and also discuss opportunities for civic tech professionals to apply their skills to similar challenges here in Toronto Charities. Brian is a service designer. He used to work at Government of Canada, where he's showing, Canadian Digital Services. Today he helps direct mission-driven organizations to better serve communities after years of leading digital transformation projects in-house in the public sector, as mentioned. He founded Civiq Design. Am I saying that right? Fantastic. He founded Civiq Design to bring the insider knowledge to nonprofits and government agencies tackling complex service challenges. Alison is a former tech and marketing executive from banking and telecom with a career pivot to the nonprofit sector. Fantastic. She is currently leading the Daily Bread Food Bank's volunteer program of over 8,000 volunteers per year. Guys, let's give a warm Civic Tech welcome to our speakers, Brian and Alison. So you can just switch. We have a clip-on and the handheld.
He's going to go. Fun fact while we're getting set up here. I have a family member, a parent who is an urban planner, or was an urban planner. He's now retired, and helped with plans for some Toronto waterfront stuff a very, 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 very long time ago. And then went back to the city to help implement it later in his career. So I'm a planning geek too, just by genes.
All right, I think I'm mic'd up, so you should, I think you can hear me, right? All right, so yeah, Alison and I are really excited to share with you today the journey that we've taken to reimagining the volunteer experience at Daily Bread Food Bank. And this project really represents a collaborative effort to address real challenges using service design methodologies with outcomes that are already showing promising results, which Alison kind of has some really interesting metrics to show at the end. Quick intro, I guess, but we don't really have to because Rock did that, but I'm Brian, and I'm the principal and founder of Civic Design, and happy to be here. And
yeah, and I'm Alison, having gone from banking and tech and stuff to Daily Bread Food Bank about 18 months ago.
All right, so agenda for today, Alison's going to just provide a bit of context on the project, how it started, and then I will discuss the discovery process, the service design work that was done, some of the research insights that were uncovered, and then I'll hand it back over to Alison, who will talk about how those insights were then converted to actionable recommendations, which were then talk about the impact that those recommendations had once they were implemented, and then leave with some kind of close and food for thought about how we can leverage this within the civic tech community, kind of civic tech volunteers and charitable organizations in Toronto.
So just some context, Daily Bread Food Bank, we're sort of an umbrella organization that helps 130 different agencies across Toronto. So churches, housing projects, things like that. 130 different programs get food from us. And we're distributing about 50 million pounds of food every year. So we need lots and lots of volunteers to do that. We do have corporate volunteers, groups and school groups, but our core group of probably about 1,200 volunteers are the ones that come week after week, and we can really rely on to get that 50 million pounds of food out. I come from, I've been at a tech organization where we used experience design to design apps for a variety of stakeholders. And then I was in an HR group that was using experience design to design better employee experiences. And so when I came to Daily Bread, I thought, I wonder if anyone's done experience design for volunteers experience, and specifically the beginning of the volunteer experience. So being just one person and the organization not having any experience doing this, because I think it's fairly novel that nonprofits do this. And so I went to Volunteer Toronto and made a posting that, and LinkedIn and other places saying, hey, I need help doing this. Are you a UX designer, or have any experience in this? And I got a number of early career folks, so that was wonderful. And then right near the end, I got this resume from Brian, and it was like, holy cow, he's done this for like ever. Sorry, not ever. And he wants to like put a lot of time into this so we can do it properly. And he's training me while we're doing it. So, and some of the volunteers that help execute it. So that's how I like completely lucked out, like lottery style lucked out. And Brian got involved, and I'm going to hand it over to him to tell us about how that worked. Oh.
I can hand it over if you want, or you can
Okay,
take
yeah.
it.
So really the problem statement, we've done the fundamentals here. We had some challenges with, we have a lot of people interested in volunteering, but sometimes we don't have enough roles for them, or vice versa. We have too many jobs and not enough volunteers. We have volunteers who just want to come for an hour, and that's maybe misaligned with what we need. And the slow or ineffective volunteer onboarding with things like training classes and having trainers available to train people in health and safety and in what they're doing. It could be a month or two before a really great volunteer gets their foot in the door. And that was a big problem. So we also, our operations team, I have about 17 different managers that have volunteers in their areas. And I'm kind of like their HR manager, because I've got to recruit and retain those folks, but they have some very high expectations. And then we need to make sure that the volunteers are trained well and are able to safely process food, take out stuff that's not good, and really be a value add to us. So the question was, how might we accommodate the varying needs and expectations of new volunteers while contributing to net positive operational goals?
All right. And now that we kind of have laid down the kind of context and problem statement, I'll talk about the discovery phase itself. So like how we explored the current volunteer journey to understand what was wrong and what was going well. And kind of just to kind of pepper in what we're going to talk about later, as Alice mentioned, it was like a really exciting opportunity for me to leverage my skill sets that I do professionally in a kind of pro bono capacity, and not just be like a body in the food bank, but actually contribute to like using my expertise in service design to help improve the volunteer experience as a whole. So this is kind of the foundation building that we did with service design. So we followed a structured service design approach with 4 key phases. First, we documented the current state, where we made a system map, which I'll show after this slide. Then we engaged with stakeholders with in-depth interviews, analyzed pain points, and then developed actionable recommendations. And what distinguishes this service design approach from other methodologies is that it has an emphasis on the end-to-end experience and also multiple perspectives. So it's not just focusing on one touch point or one group's needs. We really kind of looked at it end-to-end, all the different touch points, as well as various actors involved in the process. And one observation from this process was that many staff members had excellent insights about improvements, but hadn't previously had a structured opportunity to share them or see them implemented. So as mentioned, our first activity was a collaborative workshop to map out the current volunteer journey. So we gathered a bunch of stakeholders in the room to document the process from multiple perspectives. And this is where we identified key actors and their roles in the volunteer journey, mapped out touch points between volunteers and the organization, documented the phases throughout the volunteer experience, and then highlighted potential pain points for further investigation.
And have you seen a smaller experience map or a sexier one than that one? It was like really awesome.
Yeah, and I think a lot of workshop participants remarked that that this was the first time that they had seen the entire journey laid out end to end, giving them new insights into how their piece fits into the larger picture. So like, yeah, we had a bunch of different people in the room and no one had ever actually seen it mapped out like this with how they fit in. And kind of just to this is a slide that's kind of an abstracted version of that map, showing the main stages and steps in the volunteer journey. Like we identified 3 major phases. There's the awareness, onboarding, and then volunteering phase, each with specific steps. And then the map also documented 4 key actor groups. There's the volunteers themselves, there's the welcome center, there's the volunteer team members, and then there's departmental supervisors for each. And each of these had distinct roles and responsibilities. And what's not immediately visible in this kind of abstracted version is the complexity of interactions and handoff between the groups. So here's kind of a zoomed in version of the map, like the first half. I'm happy to share it with anyone who's interested. And kind of there's the second half. But you can kind of see there's, swim lanes of all the actors, the different touch points, and then kind of how they interact with that end-to-end journey through all those phases. After we did the system map, we wanted to validate that. So we conducted in-depth interviews with key stakeholders across different roles and departments. And these interviews included volunteer coordinators, department supervisors, frontline staff, and welcome center personnel to get a full 360-degree view of the volunteer experience. And our question focused on 5 key areas that really came from that system map. So we know what are the things to focus on, such as awareness and initial engagement, onboarding, operational management, communication expectations, and then program improvement. And what struck me during these interviews was the universal passion for Daily Bread's mission and the genuine care for volunteers, even when discussing the challenges and frustration. Like everyone was very passionate, and this really provided them an opportunity to kind of express some ways that they could improve it. So staff often expressed that they knew parts of the process could be improved, but felt constrained by limited resources or existing systems. And they wanted to provide better experience, but faced practical obstacles. And so based off what we heard from everyone, we kind of unpacked them into insights. And these kind of emerged from those interviews and system mapping. And these insights are the foundations for our recommendations and the changes that have since been implemented. So we did some synthesis, analyzing our interview data through an infinity mapping exercise, looking for recurring patterns and themes across stakeholder perspectives. And this process involved collecting and transcribing interview notes, identifying key observations, grouping similar observations into clusters, like naming them into themes, and then validating those themes with the supporting quotes. And so what you see on the right is actually our working affinity mapping, showing the clustering process that led to our final themes. And the power of this approach is that it reveals patterns that might not be obvious from individual interviews, but emerge when you analyze the data holistically and kind of see how we see these emerging themes from what we hear from that 360 perspective. And we have some really in-depth analysis of those themes, but kind of given the time constraints of this presentation, I'll just kind of summarize. We had 4 key themes. One is around expectation and role alignment, one around access and inclusion, another around operational efficiency, and another around communication and feedback. And then based off those themes, we did kind of a needs analysis where we would look at both the volunteer and organizational needs. And the critical challenge was finding a balance between these sometimes competing set of needs, creating improvements that serve both the volunteers and the organization simultaneously. So like that was the problem statement of like how might we improve the volunteer experience, but also making sure there was a net positive operational goals being met. So with our conversation with staff, we found this universal agreement that this balance was essential. No one wanted to create a great volunteer experience that undermined operational effectiveness, nor did they want efficient operations that burned through volunteers. So the goal was to be like finding that sweet spot where improvements would enhance both sides of the equation. And to make our findings more actionable, we mapped key pain points to specific phases of the volunteer journey. So you can kind of see we have the awareness, onboarding, and volunteering, and kind of what are the pain points that happened at that. So when we could kind of focus on how we can find opportunities to alleviate those pain points. And what was particularly revealing in this mapping was that there was a concentration of pain points in the onboarding phase, suggesting that this transition period represented the greatest opportunity for improvement. And speaking of those opportunities for improvement, I'll pass it back to Alison, who will talk about how we converted these insights into action.
Sorry. Oh, wrong one. So it was really exciting that we had all that information and the basis to go on it. And I had a lot of autonomy to test and get those things right into practice. Between meetings even, when we had some recommendations, I just went and started changing things. And so we did things like removing barriers to participation. One program was for some folks that didn't speak English, new to Canada. Safety-wise, not able to sort the food items donated because they go in wrong boxes and things like that. But we created a new program where they came in for tasks that didn't need any English. So sorting vegetables, for instance. Universally, you know if a carrot is bad or good. And so we were able to have over 6,000 hours for 125 people in that group. So that was an accessibility. And if we go to the next one, so the before included an on-site orientation for everyone. And we'd have a really large no-show rate for that. And people would come and then they'd say, oh, but I want to volunteer in North York. And we'd say, well, that's great. Go contact North York Harvest. So we changed it to sort of mixed modal. So we did an online information session, and I used a great technology called eWebinar, Canadian, Toronto-based company, I think, so that those information sessions could be continuously played on demand. We also introduced a 10-minute call with the volunteers. So before, we didn't really have any vetting or one-on-one, but we really felt that it was important to address those questions up front to make sure that the volunteers' expectations are matching our expectations. And we continue to do both those things. And then we had specific area onboarding. So we have 4 main areas, and each area has their own one session training on that specific thing. Oh. So drum roll, please. Impact. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So one of the hypotheses is that we would have a higher conversion of new people to people who have finished training. And that was proven wrong. In the old process, it was about 18%. So if you have like 100 people come in, 18 would end up being trained. In the new process, it was 19. It was better, but not by a lot. But our no-shows for the training radically reduced from 35% to 22% of the on-site training. And then the info sessions saved us over 800 hours of presenting and doing in-person things. And do I have another slide? Next slide? No. Oh, so interestingly, the active after 3 months. So this is the money one, is that prior to, in the old process, after 3 months, so you signed up and 3 months later, only 8% of the people were still volunteering with us. And in this new process, it's 14%, which, you know, like it's almost double. 14 is still very low and we're still tweaking. But that alone makes all these changes worthwhile. And it shows that we're getting the right people in the door, doing the right tasks, and that they're, both our staff and the volunteers are happy with that. So over to Brian.
Yeah, and I just want to say a huge shout out to Allison, because we kind of did this over the holidays. And when I came back in the new year and said, oh, how are we going to action these insights? Allison just ran with it with her team. That kind of took all those insights, ran with it, made that new process, and then kind of we were already seeing the results. So it was kind of a really great collaborative effort. And yeah, they really ran with the insights, and here they are in action and the impact that it had. And so kind of, I just want to leave a final slide to say, I think that like civic tech skills and community needs, like when you add them together, it really is a perfect match. And this is an example of how, service design expertise really had transformed this volunteer experience, improving both the satisfaction for volunteers, making sure that they're being, like, their expectations are being met, but also the efficiency with the reduced hours that, that's a part-time employee worth 140 hours a month being saved. And this is just an example of kind of that untapped potential. So kind of want to leave the question open about how might we leverage the civic tech community and their skills to volunteer for our Toronto-based charities like Daily Bread, and kind of fill those gaps. So yeah, we're kind of open for a Q&A now, and we'll be available for a breakout room later as well. So thank you.
Amazing, guys. We are actually going to just have about 2 questions in the room, 2 questions online, but don't worry. Our speakers are going to be around for the second half, so you can get more in depth and more intimate into the conversation and connection, if that's okay. Great. Actually, we will, if you guys want to share that one, just raise your hand. I'm just going to see the first person here. And Ashish, we're going to do 2 in the room and then 2 online, if that's okay.
Okay, more than excited.
Okay. Thank you for the talk. So we're organizing Civic Spark, which is a conference that's happening in a few weeks. And I'm the volunteer coordinator. So this is very helpful. I have a specific question, which is, so you mentioned that you call every volunteer. Do you do screening questions during that 10-minute call? Like, what sort of questions are you asking? And you do it for every volunteer, right?
Yeah, so we're lucky in that we don't need to do background checks on folks because you're working with food, you're not working with children or seniors, that kind of thing. But in our call, it's less about like specific questions, it's more about a conversation. And it's thanks for watching the info session. We want to see what area might be the best. So we talk about availability of the different areas, and it changes week to week, the availability. So we have real time saying, we have a kitchen training session coming up on Friday. We don't often have kitchen training. You can do that. Or there is no kitchen training. Why don't we get you in food sorting first? And one question that we actually use to get a sense of motivations is what keeps you busy during your days. So that's without saying, what's your job? What's your immigration status? Did you lose your job? What is it? It is a conversation to get a better idea, so we can slot people into the best spots for them. And I'd be happy to talk about how you might recruit some more volunteers.
Really nice question. Thank you. We'll take one more in the room here.
Thanks. That was a great presentation. And I find your prompt question, Brian, really compelling. So I guess my question is, I'm really curious to hear about kind of the sort of working relationship and like in particular, what drew you to volunteer for this in the first place, Brian? And then for Alison, like, where, if you were seeking out similar support in the future, would you go back to the Volunteer Toronto Board, or would you go somewhere else?
That's a great question. And for me, it's, I come to Civic Tech and there's really interesting projects, and I do a lot of work in the kind of public sector doing service design. But sometimes I find that I wanted to be able to leverage my skills because I'm interested in volunteering. So when I saw this opportunity, I said, oh, this is kind of a win-win. And when I spoke to Alison, because I said, I can do this pro bono and feel like I can make a big impact where I can put some volunteer hours, but at the same time do something that will be kind of beneficial, where I can use my skill sets, help an organization, and then also use it as a case study because it was pro bono consulting for my org. So I can get a glowing recommendation from Alison if it was good. But
have a glowing recommendation.
And at the same time, was able to do good work where I'm not just kind of, I feel like I made a big impact. It's probably one of the most impactful projects that I've worked on. So, and our working relationship was very she understood that I had professional expertise. So she very much let me kind of run with it and put me in touch with the right people to do the interviews. And we kept it pretty light. But what was great was then after I had the insights, I felt there was an obligation for me to help action them, but they just ran with it. I didn't actually come up with any of the, I didn't actually do any of the implementation or anything, they kind of just ran with the insights. So.
Yeah, and I totally lucked out. But if I was to do it again, I think I should go to like a Civic Tech, or if it was, I don't know, maybe I was doing some specific technology project, I should go to that tech, right? It's still posted on LinkedIn. Was it LinkedIn you found it? Yeah. And Volunteer Toronto is generally their target audience is students looking for their 40 hours, new folks to Canada looking for hours, and maybe the occasional retired person. So my target sort of audience wasn't really within Volunteer Toronto, but it doesn't hurt. Yeah, and I was really excited to get Brian.
Well, amazing. Thank you. We'll take 2 quick questions online. Ashish?
So we've got Jason.
Yeah, great presentation, Alison and Brian. I really enjoyed that, and I really liked your thoughtful approach to investigating what the problems were. And I was curious to know on the scale and logistics behind the interview process. It sounded like you had quite a few inputs from a variety of sources, and I was curious to know how many people and how much effort you put into the actual interviewing and the kind of process behind that.
So we did speak to different representatives of every team. But in terms of, we kind of did just enough research, which was what we read in the book club, where essentially we interviewed just enough people that we could feel like we got a good diverse perspective. It was more of subject matter expert interviews. So we really I think there was about 5 people that we interviewed. Each were 1-hour interviews, same script. And and Alison kind of did all the coordination.
Yeah, I picked the grumpiest people and the nicest people. But actually, we also leveraged another pro bono thing. The Ivy Business School was looking for a project to do, and they were looking at our volunteer software. So a lot of this is the software side of things. So they did extensive volunteer interviews and kept the notes and the insights from that. So we didn't have to redo it because a lot of it was the same. So we, again, using another sort of pro bono, and it was a good experience to meld the two.
Very impressive. Thank you.
Do we have another question online?
Actually, I've got quite a few of them.
Great. We'll have time for one, but not to worry. At the session afterwards in the breakout, Alison and Brian, I can just see their faces and they're just very happy to give us some insights.
Could I do a bit of a cheating? Even though Mev, you're first, could I please give Rob a chance beforehand? I do know I'm skipping you, but I think that's a one-on-one question in a way. Rob, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I was just wondering, so, I imagine there are other people in the room who are always interested in opportunities to work more in the volunteer space, not-for-profit space, and you guys both coming, one from the public sector, one from banking. I was curious if you have kind of a lesson learned, something that you weren't expecting that was different about going through this service design process, maybe something that you were expecting to work or not work that you found, went the other way.
Well, I come from corporate, so having done this at a bank and having done this at a digital firm, it was very like, let's log our hours, and it was quite slow. And are we really following what we need to? getting that key message. At the bank, again, it was just like organizing things and almost getting blessing from others. So we had our interviewees, but then we had sort of blessings that the other people agreed to the insights, and certainly couldn't execute at the speed we did. So that's the surprising thing, is that my boss was really great. Like he didn't know what service design was. I had to send him to Wikipedia. But he just said, okay, like do it. And with the software, we could change things really quickly. So we've probably made at least a dozen major changes over the last couple of months.
Yeah, and just to echo what Alison said, it's just the kind of nimbleness of being able to do a lot more with less, and then the speed of execution that you can do, where if you were working in the public sector, kind of changing vendors or getting approvals to speak to people, it's a much more, can be an arduous process, where it was a lot more easy to kind of be nimble and get the insights and then execute them in a pace that would be a lot more difficult in a more large kind of enterprise-driven organization, whether public or corporate.
Yeah, and I benefited from a lot of autonomy. I didn't ask permission for any of this. I'm well into my career, and I was like, well, what are they going to do? Fire me, right? So, which I don't want. I love working there. But, so I just did it.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Ryan, Alison, thank you. Guys, let's give these guys a hand. This is amazing. Thank you so much, Brian, Alison. I was looking at the room and everyone was leaning over and everyone was off their phone. You really made a real impact. No, this is very, thank you so much. You really made an impact on some people. We learned some great things. Great.